Invisible Histories Project is a 501c3 whose goal and mission is the location, preservation, and access of individual LGBTQ history in the American South.
We're not a traditional repository, so we don't have a big building somewhere with a bunch of archives. Instead, we're an intermediary between resource institutions like universities, libraries, museums, and archives, and LGBTQ individuals and organizations.
Queer Southern people do not have access to their history. Less than 17% of K-12 and higher education students have any access to queer history. And if you can get it at all, it is not of the South. It's of LA or San Francisco or New York. And so doing this work is important because we are giving back to queer Southerners and trans Southerners their own history.
We also really believe in challenging narratives around the South, particularly when we talk about the LGBTQ history in the US. We either omit the South or we think of the South as a cautionary tale, a place where, LGBTQ people can't survive, much less thrive. And we know from our own narratives and experiences that that's false. IHP began as a conversation between myself and my co-founder, Josh Burford. He was working in Charlotte, North Carolina, doing LGBTQ archiving there. I was working at a university in Birmingham doing LGBTQ programming and services.
Megan came up to me and said sort of casually, hey, do you think that we might be able to do this project, but on a much bigger scale in Alabama? And I said, sure.
By February 2018, Josh had moved back to Birmingham and we were officially collecting. We're looking for pretty much anything that is related to a queer trans person's life or their organization that they're a part of. We don't want people to get bogged down in trying to figure out the specifics. We want people to contact us. We'll talk you through what we're looking for, and we'll even help you go through your materials to figure out what is archivable and what it probably isn't.
The last thing that we do with the material is exhibiting. We want the materials out of the boxes and in full view of the public, because again, it really is about like someone seeing an object or reading a newspaper and going, oh wait, I have this one photo of the only gay bar in Mississippi that they ever went to. And inspiring people to think about their own connectivity is really an important part of how we use the material.
You can find us at invisiblehistory.org, on Instagram and Facebook at Invisible Histories Project, and on Twitter at IHP South.
So, Pame Ceballos Amores is a Latinx art historian and museum professional and is currently serving as the curator of education at the Alabama Contemporary Art Center in Mobile, Alabama. And for the past 7 years, their work has focused on leading art education projects that promote the expression of cultural identities and encourage collaborative community relationships. They are passionate about learning, and Pame can speak 4 languages, and her research and interests range from participatory and relational arts to art studies on gender, cultural identities, and politics. And thank you so much, Pame, for being here and speaking to us. And I'm going to look for the video really fast, but would you like to say anything beforehand?
I kind of wanted to put a question out there and see, just looking at that video from Invisible Histories, what do you think is worth, because I feel like something that Invisible Histories does very well is democratizing the idea of archive. So do you feel like there are things, like in your mind, there might be things that are worth archiving and some that are not? And who chooses that? Like, how do you feel about who chooses what is an archive? I don't know. I guess we can think about that as we watch the video as well. Because I did notice as we were going through our creative prompt that we were all like, whoa, like choosing things that would define ourselves and how that is important to tell a story. So yeah, just think about that, and we'll put it in our discussion, I guess. I was wondering, and I want to know. Yeah.
Oh, thank you so much. And I'm going to start the video right now. Okay.
How do you discover a covered up root? How do you trace the edge of a closet void? Ignited by the work of Josh Burford and Megan Sullivan at Invisible Histories Project, a repository for the preservation of the history of LGBTQ life in Alabama and the entire Southeast, we located an occasion to wonder on the original and imaginative ways Southern queer folks archive their her stories. As we've heard Josh put it, queer people often feel like orphans in history. If we want it, it's up to us to go and hunt it. What the work of Invisible Histories Project points to is the imaginative power that queer people must employ in order to come to know their histories. It made us wonder, what makes a story, an object, a life, part of a queer history, both collectively and individually? What technologies are employable in order to depict and remember queer narratives? How do we keep from capturing our legacies and focus instead on activating them? How do you count the lessons of a vast community so often forced to operate underground? And who is counting? We'll start. Angela Davis, Little Richard, Nell Carter, Laverne Cox, Brontez Purnell, Jim Neighbors, Robin Roberts, Deidre Downs, Fannie Flagg, Zora Neale Hurston, Minnie Bruce Pratt, Ma Rainey, Brittany Howard, Trinity Taylor, Charlene Incarnate. As queer people currently and consistently living, loving, and existing in the state of Alabama, our own histories have been obscured, not only from us, but from everyone we know as well, replaced with legislated hate tinged in gospel tones. And since we know a spectrum of queer and trans experiences have always existed on this earth, one can fairly assume that they have always existed within the great state of Alabama. We only need to see the smoldering shock of Tallulah Bankhead's smirk in every fourth grader's Alabama, Its History and Geography. We only need to listen to the voice of Big Mama Thornton in a Chevrolet on a too hot day to know this much is true. If we are looking for energy on which to run these thoughts, we only need to start with the friction between the roots of the word archive, from the Greek language meaning public records, and the roots of the term queer, from Low German meaning oblique, off-center. And now that we are creating electricity by rubbing these roots together, we can illuminate how the labor of queer archiving is to enter into the public square, the public record, from a dazzling diagonal. Yes, queer people must twist the center once again, brothers, sisters, and all of us in between. This is what queer folks do. We disrupt the inherited narratives, the traditional methods, and by disrupt, we mean enhance it. Because we are raised within the center and rise outside of the center, it is easier for queer people to name the center and thereby shake it. Some of us perform the labor in all black. Some of us arrive in glitter. But the power is shared. It is communal. The work is not always the same, Lord have mercy, no. But it can shimmer in its similarities and it will resonate at the points of difference. It can be found within these walls in the nonchalant matter-of-factness of Wanda from Coleman, her Marlboro hat cocked to one side, and the tapes of Bob Huff. It glows in the subversive sermons of Marge Rigona, and it is activated anytime a queer person claims their own inheritances and stakes out their own legacies. By that we mean queer history shimmers everywhere and can collect especially in the most unexpected of places.
Just a little bit of context. That was not written by me. That was written by Jackie Clay, the curator for the exhibit. I just read it. Take it away, Pame.
I also want to say that and like recognize the amazing work that Kat has done. We both recorded it together, but Kat did all of the editing and all of the voiceover. So this is very much a Kat project, and I wanted to give her all of the love and all of the claps. Yes, so I think there's a couple of things that I want to talk about. Um, yes, a lot of the things that I want to talk about in relation to what the text was saying. So, for example, I want to probably get started with the meaning of the word archiving. To collect, right? To collect different. It just means to collect history in a way. And so, a lot of times, I feel like, and let me preface this too, because, and I don't know if y'all noticed, but the pieces that are in this exhibit are very much personal to Bo McGuire, who is one of the curators of this exhibit. And they are actually pieces from their grandfather's house. And so their grandfather passed away. And just telling a little bit of Bo's history, he grew up very much like a pretty traditional childhood in the South. His family was their family was very religious, and he had, or I'm not sure. I'm gonna go back and forth because I think he uses he/they pronouns. But anyway, they had an uncle and who was openly gay and dressed in drag, and then he of course grew up in this big, like heavily hyper masculine or hyper gendered in general family. And so the pieces that we see in this exhibit reflect some of those things. Can y'all think of anything that y'all saw that could reflect a hyper-gendered household, or that you may recognize in your own upbringing, in your own space where you grew up? And please feel free to unmute.
I see that Max is raising his hand.
I feel like some type of gendered language is the gendered environment would probably be something along the lines of the classic, women belong in the kitchen and men belong, at work. Um, and the guy, the masculine role does the work, and the feminine role does, the cooking, the cleaning, the sewing, things that are considered genuinely a woman or a feminine job to do. That would probably be an example of something, and that can really tie into the queer community as well, because there's if you come out as trans, um, they like there's some things that people can say, like, oh well, if you want to be a guy so much, and why are you wearing dresses, and why are you doing makeup, and all this other stuff, or if you want to be a woman, why are you wearing overalls, or all this other stuff. And that can also, that kind of gendered language can apply to queer environments as well.
Yes, and you could see, for example, there were all of these pictures of like children, right? And it was probably, I'm gonna guess, Bo's uncle and his family, and how masculine the kids looked, or feminine in the case of like the little girl image. And so I'm thinking, just growing up myself, just looking at my grandparents' house and remembering that, just all of the religious imagery, also just thinking about how that might impact how you might think of your own identity. And so a lot of times, and what the text also said, is that queer histories are erased, or even if they are told, they are seen as, this is their accomplishments besides the fact that they are queer. And a lot of times, and that's probably one of the reasons why queerness is so misunderstood. Yes, we might have some ideas of, or recently probably more so, historical characters that were queer. So we're thinking of Oscar Wilde, and so they're like, oh, perhaps this person has accomplishments that happen besides their queerness and not because of their queerness. And kind of telling the story of their queerness as a side story when it's such an important part of people's identity. So what I feel and what I see when I see this exhibit is understanding that queer histories are not just perhaps about sexuality or perhaps even about gender, but they're about religion and they're about, traditions of the South too, or wherever you come from. In the case of Bo, definitely, because you could see even an Alabama team type of thing, and these hyper masculine characters that are football players, right? And so one of the things that I feel there is, even though this is a very personal group of archives, I feel very related to the pieces there. It reminds me of my own experience, understanding who I am and my identity. And perhaps not all of the parts of Bo's identity, his uncle's identity, involve queerness, but because we're talking about a person who's queer, then it is all part of that story. And then kind of back to the question that I started with is, do you think, so what is something that should be archived? Oh, and there's Nelson. Hey, you're blurred. Sorry for the interruption. So what are some things that you feel are archived versus others that aren't? Do you think it has, how does somebody decide or what is archived? What do you think?
I think a lot of the times what I see when looking at like at least easily publicly available archives, particularly the ones like at libraries and stuff like that, are either explicitly scholarly works from someone who has been educated or at least writes like they have, or at the very least, if it's not necessarily like a scholarly work, it's always going to have grammar to it. It's going to be well written. And I think it's actually the Invisible Histories project that I've been following on Instagram that I've felt like this is like this breath of fresh air when I just see like communication between groups or like little publications, like a news article or something that's like, hey, we're having like this queer party on Saturday, or like, hey, this is happening on campus, and it's like much more casual and much more relatable. Yeah, that's all.
Thank you, Finn. Does anybody else, why are some things worth archiving and some aren't? How do you, yes,
Can I contribute? Am I biased? Yes and yes. But I think there's a very specific sort of, because this is archiving queer history specifically, there is this approachability and relatability, like you were talking about, Finn. And that is something that we've had to sort of create for ourselves, because approachability and relatability that we've had to make for ourselves, I think, is out of necessity, because it's not, our experience isn't something that can be backed up with scholarly works. It certainly can in this day and age, but in the past, there's not too much that was written or published, and those things that are literature based are more they hold more weight in an archival sense. They seem to be more recognized or understood or, you know, even found. So having these everyday objects that are, um, I'm pretty sure in one of the cases there's like a crumpled up tissue, there's a pack of Virginia Slims, there are, you know, tons of different glasses and recipe cards and these everyday things that are, you know, I can look around the exhibit and I can find in my house when I go home the, you know, same exact things. Of course, it's different because, you know, it's, but I have oven mitts, I have recipe cards and things like that. So um, taking this relatable approach, it kind of, it's, it's more factual than it is like sentimental. Does that make sense? So I think, especially because we're talking about archiving queer histories, we have to come from this very like factual, you know, these are the clothes that my queer ancestors wore, and these are the pictures that they looked at in their living rooms, and, you know, things like that. I think is what I was trying to get at. So
Guti, were you gonna say something?
Hi, I'm sorry. Now I hope you can hear me. Yeah, I'm back. I'm sorry. It's just that I came running, so and now I get more the picture about it and about the building an archive. It's really important. For example, for me and my people, I'm from Lima, Peru, and I've been studying for a while queer art with the pre-Columbian, pre-Incas even art, and we don't have a thing about queer history, and that it has to be with, of course, we. I was going to say we were a colony, but I guess we are still a colony in a bunch of senses, and we one of the facts or one of the things that it's the most for me that cuts my attention more is discovering one of these graves of one of some really important not Incas but before Incas, and that this person was a transgender person. And you can see that because how they are positioned, and there's kind of a, it's not a puppet but it's kind of a doll that it's put in their uh, reproduction system or whatever, that it's another one. So that meant for us that it's somebody else also, you know, like they were trying to tell us something else. And for us, like having those kind of information and those kind of info, uh, it's really important. But when they discovered this stuff, they took it away because it was too controversial. It was too, yeah, it was too controversial for everything, and that just made uh, it's like we have been silenced all this way, all along for more than 200 years since the how do you say that, not evolution, it's well, we have been out there, and it's supposed to, we have to been supposed to be um, recognizing even our own, and we haven't, because all the people that came here to make history about us, they wouldn't allow that. So for me, it's absolutely amazing to have some kind of archive, to have something that let me know also how my people was. Like, for example, that for my people, there wasn't anything bad about queer. It was just things we were. And it's hard and it's sad that we have to repress all this stuff because of colonizers, because of Spanish people coming here and not understanding what was going on. We have lots of art with ceramics and shit like that, but still it wasn't explained and until now because that's what I wanted to say. That it's we're a colony, but we're still a colony. We have these these ceramics, this stuff, and that are pretty explicit, but we still cannot uh, be open about that because we still serve until certain parameters of what everybody is supposed to think or how it's supposed to be. So for me, when I hear something and understand some other stuff, and for me, I enjoy it because then I can get some similarities about some other stuff that I've been reading here that I've been looking for, and yeah, well, yeah, sorry.
Ruthie, let me, and I know that Max replied something, and I want to read all of that as well, but something very important that I got from Kat and Guti's reflection. So you're definitely absolutely right. One of the reasons why there's not a lot of queer history is because not only have queer people have to spend either all of their life or half of their life, like Bo says, buried, or like Jackie says, buried, or in the closet or in a chest, but also because a lot of times queer histories are put in the closet, are hidden, and the amazing power that I feel when I look at this is that is reclaiming the ability to talk about history in the reflecting our personal history, because a lot of times perhaps we might feel like we are not and I'm gonna talk about what Max was saying, things that preserve history. We don't think of our own lives as historical, perhaps. Perhaps the etching that Guti found was of a person that didn't know that that was relevant or was relevant in that moment. But because it exists, it validates everybody's human experience. And so thinking about all of the different a lot of times people, and I hear like my grandmother or people that are I want boomers, but everybody before them as well, said, well, in my time there wasn't any of this, and the truth is that there was that they were hidden, they were buried, they were in coffin, they were in a chest, they were in a closet, and it feels like it definitely feels like taking power back, looking at things as common as a Halloween costume, or the dress that or the time that your uncle realized that or that you realized that your uncle dressing up in different clothes was okay and it was beautiful. Those things are also part of history. And so I feel like one of the things that this exhibit is bringing out is that encouraging us to think of our own stories as archivable and worthy of being part of history. And I'm going to read just that. Yeah, as, some of what Max said. So Max said, archive-worthy things are things that preserve history. It may not be things that are material, but rather can be simple recordings or writings. They're something that you can experience and use to imagine what it would be like in that moment. Examples of queer historical archives items might be drag outfit from Stonewall, or recording photos, protest, riots for LGBTQIA rights, and things like that. And one of the things about that is that too, when I think of historical people within the queer community in the last 50 years, like the first one that came to my mind was like Harvey Milk, which is a lot about white queer history. And it wasn't until a couple of years ago that I learned about Marsha P. Johnson and other people of color, like I think Sylvia Ramirez, and different activists that were alive and that were making history, but that were hidden because they wanted to be kept in a space hidden. And so just wanted to encourage everybody to think of your own self and your history as part of our queer history of our times. And yes, I think I'm going to pass it to Kat and or anybody that wants to talk about more discussions or questions and things like that. I think that's all
Yes.
that I had to say.
Thank you so much, Pame. I saw that Gabby had a question. That was fantastic.
Well, I just kind of wanted to like add to that a little bit. That was definitely along the lines of what I was thinking, like as far as like we are history and like we create and like for future generations and like specifically for me, my work that I'm doing right now is like specifically in the niche or like the intersection of like alternative music slash culture and like Black, Indigenous, people of color, where that intersects. And I feel like a lot of folks are not doing that. And so I feel like that's why I need to do it more, because I don't want to look back, or I don't want other people to look back and like only see things from one perspective, you know? Like I don't want people to look back at the alternative music scene and only see it from white men's point of view, especially since like if it wasn't for Black people, we wouldn't have that kind of music anyway. So like I want to make sure that I'm highlighting things that in the future we can look back on and be like, okay, this is my history as well, this relates to me, you know. So yeah, like what you were saying, I think that's really important to realize that like, yeah, we are history and we create what other people are going to see in the future and what people are seeing now. So yeah.
Did you guys want to see some of the still photographs that I have of the exhibit? Would that might be good rather than the Skippy video? Okay, I'm gonna share my screen then and show you guys some of the things. I'm first gonna show you, these are pictures that I took during installation. How can I full screen it? There we go. But these are the recipe cards I was talking about. This one right here is for $1 million pie, I believe. And then the one above it is like hamburger casserole, and these are the oven mitts, and yeah, there are two of these. How do I, there we go. I can't. There are two of these tables, and here's the one. See, there's the tissue that I mentioned earlier, and this writing, and here I believe is like, it's the cigarette container, and the pack of Virginia Slims is like right here next to it. But I took this picture specifically for our Instagram, so it's a little square, I'll admit. But the glasses and the scissors, and I love all the different like samples of handwriting. I don't know, I think that's something that's very like tangible and brings it back to the focal point of it all. This is the chest that is where we have it placed in the gallery is it's at like the very end of the exhibit. So to me, it's like you found the treasure chest. But it was a chest that was in Beau McGuire's grandmother's house, and it was one of the only places he was allowed to play. And you can see, I'm assuming that these are his grandparents, though I'm not for sure. But there's different little baby shoes. There's some like rolls of pennies and a bandana and a wallet. I also really love that the chest still says Lane Cedar Chest. Like this is the advertisement for it, and it kind of points to that logo there. I don't know. I just think that's nice. But all these different clothes and these different pictures of the women in his life. I'm assuming these are all of his grandmother. But he lives in her house now, I believe, but had a very close relationship with her and bipartisan femininity, I believe. In Beau and I spoke very briefly about the exhibit while he was here working on installation, and he was saying that a lot of what Invisible Histories is doing is the imaginative work. So in the imaginative work of archiving, right? So we have these shoes, these cowboy shoes, I believe that were worn by Beau himself or worn by his uncle. Who it is, I am not sure. But because it's these tangible and recognizable objects, we are kind of forced to also envision the person who would be wearing these shoes, the person who would be wearing these clothes, or the person that stood behind the camera when they took this photo. And it puts you in the space of these objects, and it's I'm loving it. I'm loving it. Let's see. I'm looking at my notes, which is why I'm going back and forth. What else did he say?
Kat, can I add something that I forgot?
Yes, of course.
So another part of the exhibit, and it's a quite large area, but it actually has 3 different things. So there's a lot of writing, but I don't know if I saw it. So there's a whole case with
Yeah.
letters. I think that is it. With letters and writing. And that is writing that was done by a local priest, March Ragona, who was not queer himself, but was one of the first priests in the area where Beau grew up, and in general in the Birmingham area, who was opening the church space to queer people that had been expelled out of church. And so for a lot of queer people, talking about religion comes with some trauma, because it meant to I haven't gone through this myself because I haven't been religious, but I know friends that are part of our community that feel like they were detached from this huge part of who they were as soon as they were out of the closet, or that they were made to be out of the closet. And so March Ragona was one priest that welcomed that, and that often gave these amazing speeches and gospel during important times of the year. So I think there's a Christmas Mass speech and a New Year's Mass speech, which were, as you can imagine, massive gatherings where he would talk about acceptance and loving other people, and didn't get shy about mentioning queer people. And so Beau was also talking about, in that way, the importance of highlighting allies in that sense, because as much as it's also important, it's the forefront is important to show queer histories. It's also important to show stories of acceptance and welcoming difference. And so that is another element of this exhibit that I feel would resonate with different experiences of life. I know that one of the, like, for speaking for myself, one of the things that I felt most scared about is the way that my grandparents would react to me coming out, because I felt like they would probably not understand it or wouldn't accept it, and I was just so afraid of missing their presence. And so and part of that reason is because they were so religious. And so I really felt like including that religious aspect into this exhibit was essential, and it made me think of all of those instances. Yeah. Okay.
So this is the list of all of the things that are a part of the archive. Some of them we have in our gallery, some of them we do not, just in terms of the space and what we could do with it. So just wanted to show you guys. We have a couple of these banners that are hanging up.
Kat, I don't think everybody can
Oh,
see.
what about now? Can you see me?
No.
No.
Oh, why don't you stop sharing and then start over again?
Start over. Okay. Okay.
Thank you, Kat.
Hey, no problem. What about now?
Yeah.
Okay. Dang, Pame, while you were talking, I thought I was being so cool. I was like showing the pictures and zooming in and like going over all these different places. It's fine. It's fine. So these are some of the banners that we have. Like, I believe we have this one hanging up in our gallery, kind of from the rafters, which is very cool. And here are just a few more of them. Dun, 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 dun. And this is a piece that did not make it into the gallery. We couldn't find enough magazines and we ran out of time. There were lots of different factors. This is a still from one of, there are lots of videos playing in the exhibit, which were sort of hard to capture on camera, obviously. But this is in the voiceover that you heard. I mentioned something about their Marlowe hat was caught. This is that person. This is the video of that person. But I wanted to make sure they were mentioned because it was in the literature. Also, if anyone would like a picture of what's written on the wall that I read in the video, let me know. I can text it to you. I couldn't really figure out how to put captions on it because that was a lot of work, but I'm happy to share the literature with you. So here we see Bo behind the nanny's cedar chest, and then some of the socks that are included. And also Bo himself is a filmmaker, and so there are most of the videos that are playing are either done by Bo or Jackie, obviously, but they are very well done. Yes, this is his Uncle John's senior portrait, which is probably one of my favorite parts of the exhibit itself. Yes, and this clock, I believe, was hung in the wall of his grandfather's house. That was where it lived, and now it's on our walls, which is kind of cool. Mechanics seat, we've got Nanny's glasses, one of many glasses, coffee cup, etc., 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 etc. Yeah, but does anyone have any questions? We're almost done. There's 2 more pages of these pictures if we... Oh, Mama Washington and Great Aunt Sarah's scrap quilt was one of my favorite. Also another I keep saying that. I like all the pieces, guys. I can't pick favorites, but the quilt is especially nice because it is so large, and we have it hanging on the wall behind that very old-fashioned TV. And it sort of just encompasses you and brings you into this, like, I don't know, very strange and visual and comforting world, as bright colors and patterns often do. This is a self-portrait of Beau, and it's also okay, yeah, it's not included in this, but he made a film called Socks on Fire, talking about various queer things. The actual plot of the movie,
I can interject.
I cannot tell you.
Yeah, Stocks on Fire is actually the show, the drag show that Beau created. And we're actually going to have a live presentation of Socks on Fire at the museum, probably towards the end of the exhibit. But yes, so I think that in that documentary that he included some of the tours that he went through, like he toured all of Alabama, and so doing this show of Socks on Fire, and so it is that the poster kind of that commemorates that happening. So one of the things that tells Beau's queer history.
But I think that's about it from us. Thank you guys so much for logging on tonight.
What did y'all think? What I really loved what you had to say, Gucci. I really appreciate that, because it is talking about colonized bodies. I feel like a lot of times queer bodies have been definitely like the power has been taken out of queer bodies, because there are these religious limitations and sometimes just societal and cultural limitations, where those decisions have been made for us to keep remained our history hidden. And it has happened since pre-colonial times. So I really appreciate the work that you are doing, looking into that history and taking it out of where it was buried.
Thank you so much for this wonderful and lovely presentation, and also everybody for sharing your thoughts. And I did have a few questions, if I don't choke, on just living. I was wondering, so there's a video that you featured in your video, Kat, and I was wondering what's the story behind that. And it was a black person in a dress, I believe, like by a cabin of some sort. What's going on in that?
So that is a film called Sermons. There's two of them, Sermons 1 and Sermons 2, I believe, and they were shot between the years of 2014 and 2017, I believe. But it's Beau and Jackie and a couple of drag queens from their community, and they're speaking on these issues of preservation of queer life and queer joy, and not necessarily just like queer history, although it does fit perfectly into this exhibit. But I believe the one she's wearing sort of a checkered, like black and white sort of coat, it looks like. I really just loved the way, and I'll tell you guys this, when I filmed the first walk through, the first draft I did, it was, I just like held my phone. I was walking everywhere and just to see what I could get, just to see what I could do, get something started anyways. And looking through that, I just so happened to catch that one part in Sermons where she's sort of standing at a podium and then just turns away and skips. And I don't know, I just think it's cute the way that she skips off the screen. But then there's another clip that I included as well where she's then reading the script and this very sort of proud kind of tosses her hair back and looks the world in the eye. I don't know. It spoke to me. But as far as the actual film, I am not sure, Pame, if we can actually can we share the actual films? Like, do we have those available? What's
No. So, and I wanted to add to that. So the sermons, I forgot that word, and it was the name of it. But Liz, they were the readings of this priest that I was talking about, Marge Ragona. So these queens were reading the handwritten text that Marge Ragona left from those sermons that I was talking about that happened during Christmas and New Year's. And so they very much talk about scripture, but also talk about how Christianism in this specific case does not reject queerness, it embraces it. And so it does it during this very important religious festivities. And very well attended church sermons. And so the fact that I think I'm pretty sure Marge Ragona already passed away. And so the fact that those were being taken back by queens, the drag queens in that area that reclaim those texts also gives them back some power. So yeah, I hope, did that answer the question?
Absolutely. Thank you so much. And I was wondering, is there anybody else who has any questions that you'd like to ask? And with that in mind, I'm going to stop recording. And once again, thank you so much, y'all. This was fantastic and very cool.